Hello everybody, how are we all doing on this wonderful Monday afternoon? Hoping very well, hoping jolly, happy, good vibes, be fun. And yeah, whilst I've opened this on a relatively positive note, we also need to recognise what I've put as the title of this stream. There's a very, very, very big risk that Leeds could be kind of verging on losing Joe Rodon for a little bit of time. Now, admittedly, this isn't injury related. This is completely fine as far as I'm aware. Joe Rodon doesn't have an injury. Imagine if he did, though. Imagine if I've accidentally summoned that into existence. That would be bad. No. Slightly different, and it's also an issue that is affecting Jayden Bogle. I had a little bit of a think during the match against Sunderland, and I was noting how the match was getting a little bit 50-50, a little bit tetchy, a little bit last-minute challengey, very consistently. And then I had a look into some data. And then I had a look at the fact that at the moment in the league so far, Joe Rodon has 4 yellow cards. Jayden Bogle has 4 yellow cards. In the EFL Championship, in the first, I believe, 19 matches, you are allowed to have 4 yellow cards, but if you get a 5th, that ticks over into suspensions. And if you have a suspension, then you're not available for a match. And I had a little bit of a look at the matches that we've got coming up as well, and I'm not feeling too optimistic at the minute. Because I'm just going to crack FBref open for a second, just to have a look at some more little bits of data, because we love data on this channel. But we are already relatively weak at centre-back. We already have Ethan Ampadu out until January. We already have Max Wöber out for a period of time. I believe it was something like 6 weeks, might be down to 5 now. Either way, quite a while. Aside from that, we're at, what, James DeBio? Maybe we can ask Sam Byram to fill in at centre-back, even though it's not something that he's necessarily good at. But we are 9 matches into the EFL season. And Rodon's got 4 bookings. And if you're looking at that and you're thinking he can go another 10 without a yellow card, that is screamingly unlikely. That's really not good. I'm going to have a quick look at some of the specific stats for Sunderland to see how booked teams tend to get against Sunderland. Not Sunderland, Sheffield United. And Sheffield United have a reasonable number of yellow cards given to teams that are in matches against them. This season so far, there have been 21 bookings given to players that are playing against Sheffield United, which is a hell of a lot, which says that balance of probability you'll get 2 and a bit yellow cards per match, and we need to make sure that that is neither Jayden Bogle nor Joe Rodon. Thank you very much, Mr. Camera. Because if it is either of those 2 players that gets booked, then they're not going to be available for the next match, and if it happens against Sheffield United, then it's for Watford. If it happens for the Watford match, then it's whoever the hell we get to face after Watford. And that threat is going to keep going until we have played 19 matches this season so far. And even if they get a yellow card in the 19th match, it's still a suspension. It's still them not being able to play in that next game. Hello, by the way, baby zebra. Which is where I think the big spooky danger part of the conversation comes in. That's where you bump into the problems of kind of need those players. And you especially need those players when you are hitting the November-December period, because the number of games you have in those months are insane. You've got, I'll do a quick count, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. You've got 6 matches in November, and that's with an international break. You've got 3, 4, 5. You've got another 6 in December. You've got at least 5 in January, and then that's not counting the FA Cup, so that can push it up to 7. So if we do very, very early in this season end up losing a Joe Rodon or someone like that before Max Wöber is back from that injury, I know the run that we've got coming up isn't too bad. Like, Sheffield United is the not good game that we have in the coming weeks, and that should be reasonably manageable. And that goes into Watford, Bristol, Plymouth Argyle, Millwall, QPR. But all of those teams are potential landmines, because there is no team in the Championship, and I say this very, very genuinely, that can't beat any of the other teams on their day. Yeah, we've looked really, really good in all of our matches, and we were on top of Burnley, for example, but Burnley managed to beat us, which is very telling of things don't necessarily always go the way that you expect in the EFL Championship. And then you look a little bit beyond that and you say, well, okay, Schmidt's been struggling with a glute issue. What happens if Bogle does, in fact, get that 5th yellow card and he's out for a match, but then we don't have Isaac Schmidt around? Then it becomes Byram. But if at the same time you've had Joe Rodon get that yellow card, 2 bookings in a match to the 2 players that are most booked isn't the least likely thing to ever happen, especially if it's a Yorkshire derby. Then you're like, well, Sam Byram can't play centre-back and right-back, can he? So then you got DeBayo and Byram in the same side, and then you are just adding and adding and adding and adding to the danger of the situation. And I know that yellow card suspensions aren't going to be the end of the world, and they're not always the most glamorous conversation to talk about. But I think they're very genuinely going to be quite important this season. Because you look at our players that have a decent number of bookings, and yeah, they won't all get suspended because they'll know how to manage themselves, or they'll pick up that yellow card in a match where the next one isn't so important and it's fine and it's balancing out your schedule and workload and stuff. But Nonto is 2 away. Say if Dan James's return takes longer than we expected. Say if Manor Solomon takes longer than expected, and Nonto picks up a yellow card against Sheffield United and a yellow card against Watford. Then he's not around for Bristol. Same applies for a junior Furpak. Beyond that, all of our players 1 or 2 cards. That's completely fine. But that's 4 arguably very, very important players that we've got that are within reasonable reach of having a suspension issue coming up. And that scares me a bit. That very much spooks me. Because you look beyond that first team and yeah, we've got depth in the squad, and that's why, in spite of injuries, we're looking okay at the moment. But if you add the injuries and you add suspensions to the injuries and the potential injuries that we might get in the coming weeks, because again, international breaks hate us, then you start to have question marks. And to be completely clear, having 4 centre-back options at the start of the season, that isn't bad depth. Having 4 central midfield options that are all senior and quality players is not bad depth. So those injuries, I think, have chucked a pretty big pair of grenades into our plans for the season. And that's where we'll need to just sort of hope that everything turns out relatively okay. I say relatively. Relatively is a very, very important word in the world of football. And it was emphasized to me how relatively is quite important because I was having a chat with Crystal yesterday and I watched the end of the 49ers match. And they also conceded in the last minute to lose their game. Well, not lose. They did lose. We didn't lose. So sports are relative, and sports are silly, and sports are stupid, and you can never quite understand what's going on in them. But I think there's a lot of fear to be had. And admittedly, it's not the same fear that everyone else is going to be having right now, because everyone else's fear is going to be, what about the goalkeeper? But I think there's more structural issues going on. Weird freak accidents and mistakes can happen from time to time, regardless. But it's the structural stuff that I think defines a season. And I feel like this is one of those things that could cause a little bit of a problem. And I feel like this, as a stream goes, has been a little bit loosey-goosey, but that's because I had planned to do the stream literally half an hour ago from now, and I started it 10 minutes back. So it's hard to say how good at preparing things I am. But either way, that's why I think there is a little bit of a risk of Joe Rodon at the moment, and hopefully that's being very much emphasised to him behind the scenes. Because if we go down to having 1 centre-back, because, again, Ampadu could have slotted into defence, but he can't until January now. Hopefully Rodon holds it together. But we'll see. Either way. I'm going to pop up at Questions Corner because this is going to be a very short, loosey-goosey stream that's just going to have a little bit of a natter about the conversation that is going on, what is happening in general at Leeds. But yeah, I just like doing a stream sometimes. I don't know. Like, I've just got a message from Kayla saying a 3-minute warning does not suffice, let me just say. And it's like, yeah, fair enough. Maybe I didn't give that much warning, but that's fine. Yeah, I should probably plan things a little bit more in advance, shouldn't I? Loosey-goosey. Very much loosey-goosey. What have we got against the term loosey-goosey? Loosey-goosey's great. That's good words. Some of us aren't able to do 30 minutes of planned video in one take, you monster. Who do we buy in January? I think it depends on what we're looking like. So at that point, Charlie Crew will have gotten minutes. At that point, Ampadu probably returns. So it depends on how Crew does for me. I would quite like another player in midfield, but again, it's not the easiest to sign a central midfielder and say, look, in reality, once everyone is back and fit, you might be fifth choice. And fifth choice is not something that you can use to really tempt players in, especially in the January window rather than talking to free agents. There is one point that I noticed that someone made recently, and that is regarding a certain player that is currently in MLS. Is that Armstrong a central midfielder? I was convinced he was a forward. Am I thinking of the wrong person? He's a striker. We've got 3. We've got actual positions where we don't have footballers at the moment. And we're like, yeah, well, I'll be looking for a number 9. No. No. I can see the argument, but not for me. Very, very risky for me. A barnstormer would be very, very nice from James DeBayo. But I don't know if that's what we're going to be getting. I love that we're at the point where it's just like, what about the young guy that we've never seen play senior competitive football? Oh yeah, that'd be great. Let's just do that. Let's not do that. Let's be calmness, safety. I get that there is an appeal to playing the kids, but maybe for a few minutes at the end of matches at the moment. That feels like that would be the safer alternative for us at the minute. I've completely forgotten what I was going to search. No, I've not. I've found it. There is a certain player that is over in MLS at the minute. Midfielder, 34 years old. I think he's talked about Leeds a little bit in the past. That would be Matthias Klitsch. So, in the chat right now, I've just run a poll. Should we sign Click on a free? Because assuming that his side don't get into the playoffs, which there's 2 matches left of the MLS season, they need to win both and they need results to go their way for them to get in. Would he be reasonable to sign on a free on a short-term contract? Because I'm saying that isn't going to be the worst decision. I'm saying that it's not necessarily likely, don't get me wrong. But there are definitely worse players that we could look at. Like, by a margin. And so far, it looks like the chat's agreeing. I want to know who voted no. Who voted no and why? I think that's because, I mean, we know he's reasonably good. He's been playing to a good enough standard in MLS. How reasonably is he being viewed by the folks over there? I'm hoping well. Because I know that was a very, very good midfielder for us. And I imagine that he can do the same thing over again, but... Mateusz Klich. Come on, whoscored.com. Show me our favourite Polish central midfielder. Yeah, fair enough. He's had 30 appearances so far this season for DC United. Not missed much football either. 6.88 on whoscored.com. And I'll be honest, the gap between MLS and Championship isn't that big. Decent standard. When will Luca Thomas be given a chance in the first team? Right, Luca Thomas is a very, very interesting point of conversation. Because he's been doing many, many a goal, if I remember correctly. Just going to pull him up. For morale alone, I'd have him back. I mean, it'd be a good signing on the morale front. Because it'd just sort of remind people of, oh yeah, we can do promotion and we don't necessarily need to win every single match. And just imagine sort of Klitsch coming back into the squad being like, you guys know we didn't win every single time last time around, right? Right? Yeah, on the Luca Thomas conversation, you're going to have a quick look at what he's been doing in the 21s. Played 3 times, 3 goals in the league. That's not too bad. We know he's a decent player. Does he play more centrally or wide? I mean, by the look of it, he plays on the wide side rather than in the middle. Which I think is where you get a little bit risky. Oh, that's a shame. I've just seen that someone is doing a stream that seems to be focused around sacking Ilan Melier, and I'm like, I'd love to have an argument in that stream. But I'm already going over to a stream at past. And I'm already banned from that channel. So, well. Be happy with a couple of loan players in January to cover defence and midfield, depending on Vuber and Ampadu recovery times. Vuber, I think, should be mid-November, off the top of my head. Early to mid-November. So him coming back, I think, would be fairly fine. Can you play in defensive midfield as well? I seem to remember him doing that a couple of times. But I'm not certain. I am going to find some Luca Thomas highlights, just to sort of try and work out what position he likes to play in. Because if I remember right, I'm convinced that he plays on the wing, and I feel like if you bring in another winger when he's got Sam Chambers ahead of him already, and there's also a Dan James who, if fit, absolutely plays more football, and there is also a Manor Solomon who, when fit, will play more football. That doesn't really make his ascent into the first team very easy. Like, I know he can play as a 9, but I don't think 9 is our biggest problem at the moment, as much as a lot of people do. Which is very odd, considering that Sunderland hadn't conceded at home this season, and then we put 2 past them. So I think at some point, yeah, he gets in, but not yet. It's very, very early for Luca Thomas, I think. There's a hell of a lot more no's on the Klitsch on a free thing as well. Who is currently anti-Klitsch? It's absolutely wild to me, because everyone that has said something is like, yeah, for morale, I'd have him back. Any cover's welcome. No one has actually said why they wouldn't take Mateusz Klitsch. Even though he's performing pretty well at the moment. Like, admittedly, if you're looking pure numbers, 2 goals, 5 assists in 30, not the best. But at the same time, he's gone back to that sort of like passive 6-8 sort of role recently. He's doing more defensive stuff because he's not got the same running that he had 6 years ago, which is completely understandable. But I don't... On a free, it's just sort of... It makes sense, does it? So we could do Wometh. What is a Wometh? I do not understand what we are calling a Wometh. Yeah. I think if you look at the ratings that he's gotten in various matches, and you look at the sort of opposition that he faces, MLS is not the worst of leagues. At all. It's genuinely a fairly decent league. Against Chicago Fire, the guy got 2 assists and man of the match. whilst his team won 2-1, and the Chicago Fire side has pretty reasonable players in it. I know it's memed out as a retirement league and all that sort of stuff, but that's less the case now. But I think it's the case that people have continued to hold on to because it's like that's what they knew it was. But then again, Shaqiri plays for Chicago Fire. Best free available is Daniel Amate, can play centre back, DM, and right back. I think Amate would be a good pickup as well because he covers the 2 slots that we need right now. But no, I'm not saying we could do with a cheerleader. I'm saying we could do with some depth. And he's some depth that has been here for an extended period in the past and understands the fans, and the fans understand him, and there's a good culture around that. And on this, if you are new, I'll just quick reminder, it is literally my job to do football broadcasting events. I watch a good amount of MLS. Not every single week because we don't have the rights to it, but it's part of my job to keep track of global football and what's going on. And it ain't a bad league in the slightest, and consider that you are comparing it to Plymouth Argyle and Oxford United. Something about that makes me feel like the likes of a Xherdan Shaqiri could probably do a job there. It is comfortably a more competitive league than 10 years ago, yeah. And whilst a lot of people will point to, yeah, but it's going to be, the average is brought up huge by, Messi and Busquets, and this is where you've sort of got to point out that, okay, that's nice, but there's a reason that Inter Miami have lost a good couple games this season. Lost 4, drawn 8. And they are a team that has the best footballer to ever do it. In addition to Luis Suarez and Sergio Busquets and Jordi Alba. And Federico Redondo, who is not widely known at the moment, but if you play Football Manager, you know Federico Redondo. That has Benjamin Cramashi in it, who is one of the upcoming talents at the moment. It's a really, really competitive league. This is where it's hard to explain. I work for a big broadcaster, but I am also technically down as a freelancer, but that's just because international finance things are difficult. Any updates on the guy, 33, played under Farker in Germany, free agent? I saw a little bit of discussion around him maybe being a good choice, but I've not seen any solid news that is linking between us and him. Which is kind of a shame, because he looks like a very, very good player. He looks like he's got something to him. And he would be very good for the depth. But I think anyone that we're looking to sign, we'd need to sign relatively sharpish. Kramer doesn't want to come to England, doesn't he? Let's have a look. I'm going to have a quick dive into the various newsy bits here, because I want to double check the various sources on this. Christoph Kramer. They've ruled a move out, with his stance being to remain in his home nation. And that's from the YEP, so that's fair enough. Very decent source. Got to go all set up, catch you on the flip side. Indeed, see you shortly, baby zebra, who is who is about to be streaming on Twitch. I'll pop a link in the chat in a minute. And then once I'm done, hop over there, go say hello. It's really nice and a good vibe. And it's not football-y in the slightest, but it's chill, you know? And it's over there. Haha. And I did a takeover stream the other day, and very few people saw it, but it was very good fun. Champions are probably more competitive and combative than the MLS. I really don't think so. I think the issue with the MLS is that because of the wage structure and the fact that you can only pay, I think, 3 people designated salaries, which is above a certain cap. The number of teams that do all of that investment into attacking rather than defending means that it's a very open, very goal-scoring league. Which means that midfielders have to do a hell of a lot because the defenders are not great. And on this, it's a fair point that he might not be used that much, but if he's going to be a free agent anyway, hasn't been confirmed to be re-signing, I think it's worth a punt. As much as you might call it like a cheerleady shout. I don't know. But that's fine. What I'm going to do before I bring the stream to a close is I'm going to hop us over to Questions Corner, because I can't go for too long today. And I will answer questions up until I hit having streamed for half an hour. So if you've got any questions at all, check them in my direction, and I'll do my best to answer them. But yeah, the general vibe of the stream is hopefully Joe Rodon doesn't get booked in the next 10 games, and hopefully if he does, Max Wuber's been back in time. Will he fit in a Fark system? I think he'll fit in the sort of like current Rothwell-y role of pick the ball up and look forwards. And he does the running around that you would need out of a Gruev or an Ampadu in order to get into those challenges. So I think he'd fit in. It's more a question of how long would it take to adapt. So I'm not sure the system that, well, / the role that he currently plays in. I'm not sure how that compares. I'm not entirely convinced that he can get in the playoffs. No, well, he can get in the playoffs, but would need to beat Montreal. It's complicated. Stupid league. Good morning, Danny. You have come at just the wrong time. Because I'm about to nip off a little bit. Sorry about that. What MLS games am I watching this weekend? I'm not particularly, to be honest with you, because I am working on the... Let's have a look at the schedule. I think we've got the rights to a Japan match, maybe something in Germany. I know I'm working on MotoGP. Wait, is that this weekend or is that next weekend? Either way. I don't know. For this specific weekend, I might be doing a bit of NFL stuff. I'll have to find out. But either way. Do you think we need free agent cover before January? Maybe. That's why I think we have the Klitsch conversation. Because I prefer a Klitsch to a Kramer, just because A, Kramer doesn't want to come, and B, Klitsch has been here before, but maybe Klitsch wouldn't want to return. It's hard to say. But it's a very good question. Thank you very much. Actually, I can check my schedule for the weekend without having to try and think too hard. Haha. A little bit of women's football as well. Fan Davidosi. Right, okay. That seems all good. Klitsch 34, but he's a fit 34. Definitely would be a good loan signing. Indeed, that's why I'm not too mad. And it wouldn't even need to be a loan. It would just be a out of contract signing, because his contract runs out at the end of this MLS season. Anyway, I'm going to call the stream there, unless anyone has any more questions. If someone does in the next minute, then just chuck them in the chat, and that'd be fantastic. But I hope you enjoyed. If you did, pop a like on the stream, subscribe as normal, because, oh boy, international breaks make me sad when it comes to various subscribey things. Yeah, hope you enjoyed. Like, subscribe, even become a channel member if you fancy. And I will see you later. Toodaloo.